And hello again for video number 3. I don't have any tattoos, but I am told by those who do that once you get one, you're on the road to 2, 3, 4, 50 tattoos. So I have a feeling that making these videos are my tattoos. I do have a lot to say. So I wanted to talk about dropping sticks and getting blisters. I don't know if this is mostly a beginner intermediate issue, but professionals drop their sticks all the time. So one way that I've noticed that sticks get dropped, again, my personal experience, is maybe you're playing a drum fill or you're flailing around and the stick gets caught underneath a cymbal, like so, and the stick just gets ripped out of your hand. The truth of the matter is, when you're holding a stick firmly, let's say in between strokes, you kind of let up a little bit, and it's usually on the upstroke where you're releasing some of your grip, and very easily can the stick be pulled out of your hand. So I'm not talking about those situations. Of course, the way to avoid that is to just make sure that you have enough room or you're sitting far enough back, and just think about what you're doing as you're playing, and you just try to avoid those little pitfalls ahead of time. But I think one of the main reasons that drummers drop sticks, it's not a technical flaw or I need to hold the stick tighter. I think it starts in here. So I'll notice for myself, like, if I'm very confident in what I'm doing, it's a rhythm I'm familiar with, it's a song I'm familiar with, I know I'm keeping good time. The drum fills are all basic, and although improvised at the time, I'm drawing from, 6 or 7 drum fills that I'm comfortable with. I find that I just won't drop any sticks. They just won't end up flying out of my hand. But if I get into a situation where maybe I'm uncomfortable in any way, and it's usually in here where I'm not familiar with the song, or I am familiar with the song, but it's at a quicker tempo now that I'm not used to, or I'm on a gig and the artist all of a sudden decides, hey, we're going to change this chorus from, a funk feel to like this double time Latin thing. And I'm like, oh man. And I just have to think on my toes. I feel like if I'm not mentally secure as to, what I'm going to be doing, I feel like that affects my grip on the stick. So I've tried to pay attention to the scenario over the years. And especially through my students, I feel like when they drop sticks, it's always when they're trying something new, or they're trying to be creative, and it's coming from like a state of mind. So yeah, I guess the way to avoid that is to just always try to have your mind and your body working together, and make sure that you have a grip, no pun intended, have a grip on what it is you're setting out to do, and I think the whole stick dropping thing will be reduced to a minimum. The other thing is blisters. Now, when I'm playing a lot, right, I don't really get blisters because, as you guys know, you develop, maybe some tenderness. That tenderness goes away and it turns into a callus, and then the stick is just kind of gliding over your fulcrum, your finger, whatever. So I'm thinking, oh, it's the callus that, like, I have this extra protection layer, and that's why I'm not getting blisters now. And before, if I'm not playing a lot and my skin gets let's say the calluses start to get reduced, I'm thinking, oh, this is why I get blisters, because I don't have that extra layer of protection. But what I come to find out, it's not so much the callus is like this thick skin and it's like you're wearing a skin glove. it's more like you're reducing friction. So when you have a callus, like the bottoms of your feet, let's say, right, it can get really smooth, and the more, or let's say the less grip or friction or resistance that your stick has, you will be reducing the chances of a blister forming, even if your hands are let's say tender and new. So what you want to do in to help reduce friction will be a couple of things. Keep your hands dry, which may mean in between songs, you keep the sweat down to a minimum. I used to experiment with spraying antiperspirant on my hands. I can't really remember if that worked or not, but just logically, it seems like it would make sense. But the absolute worst thing, and I think, which is like a blister generator, would either be when I see guys using grip tape or duct tape, using the logic that, oh, I need grip tape because it'll help me grip the stick. But all that does is increase the heat and friction that's happening. So I think this is probably the worst thing. And drumstick companies that use that plasti dip, I think Vic Firth does a lot of that, and you know how I feel about them. So, if a student brings in sticks with that like grip stuff on it, right? I'm just like, take it off, rip it off, and it does. You could roll it off, or you could just peel it off. So I think that's some of the worst things that you can do. Now, if you are, if you don't play that much, or you're just getting back into playing after taking a short break or whatever, I wear like batting gloves, like for baseball. I don't like the drummer's gloves. I feel like they're a little too like lean, I don't know. They're almost too fashionable. The batting gloves are a little bit more clunky, but they're still, they still have like leather protection everywhere. And I find with those, like if I do one or two rehearsals with batting gloves on, I won't get any blisters because, my skin is tender. And it starts the formation of calluses. So, like, you don't want a callus to form as a result of a healed blister. You want a callus to form just from use of the stick, rubbing against your hand. So wearing a glove, I think, is a safe way to start, getting your hands used to, the friction of the stick. And then, as calluses start to develop, then I put away the gloves, and then, it's kind of like growing a callus safely. And then it's usually a non-issue, and then there's no blisters from that moment on. So, again, dropping sticks, I believe it comes from, just like a little lapse in your mind of knowing what you're doing and maybe being tentative, or maybe thinking about thinking rather than just, having an understanding of what you're doing and being in the moment. And the whole blisters thing, I think, will come from, stick wrap, anything that increases friction, like sweat, when your hands get too tacky, or any kind of, they sell like this tacky grip stuff. Again, I think that's the worst things on the earth. Also, I should say, sticks that have like a really heavy varnish on them, like Regal Tip, I think also create like a slipping scenario, because, I guess your sweat is like, you're almost like hydroplaning off the stick with something like that. So I don't like that. And the sticks that I think ProMark makes, called the Natural, it's just plain wood. And although that's good for like moisture absorption, I feel like because it is just like raw wood, of course it's like sanded and everything, I feel like that also causes friction. So, hey, just some tips. If anyone has something to add to that, please do. I'd be curious to see what your thoughts on what we just talked about. See ya.